Hi there. I'm John Spade. It's the egg on this Friday. And for those of you who live in Calgary like myself, it's 1 degree and we're wondering where summer went. And we've got a few days left in summer before we officially move into fall. And we're dealing with weather right now that actually we see usually around mid to late October. It's not fun. It's one of those things, and anybody that lives in a climate where it's overcast a lot knows that it can really affect the psyche and your mood and how you feel about everything. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of us right now praying for some sunshine. Today's egg is going to be focused on a couple of things. Yesterday I said I was going to get into this whole gun registry fiasco. And I also want to touch on spirituality. Specifically, I was reading an article from CNN. It was one of those ones that I read, and after I finished reading it, I had to go back and read it again. I thought it was a pretty remarkable article that talks about our moral code and it being out of date. And what the authors refer to is basically how civilization has progressed over the last 1,000 years. We've relied on religious teachings basically to give us guidance moving forward. It's been used as our guide to living, to better living. And we know that a lot of mistakes were made over the last 1,000 years, 2,000 years. A lot of things that our civilization went through as far as how we, survived on this earth and what we did to move forward was based a lot on what the teachings of religious scripture gave us, for better or worse. And now that we're in basically a technological era, the feeling is, and after I read it, it got inside my head, and I started really thinking about where we are now. And our religious teachings out of date, because that's what the authors are suggesting. Our moral code is out of date. There's no question that morality right now, depending on how you define it, is different than what it was, say, 50 years ago. What we consider acceptable behavior 50 years ago, a lot of people probably would have had mild heart attacks with what goes on in our society. We hardly blink an eye. There are really nasty things going on. Just a couple of things I probably want to get into in a future egg because it would take up too much time to discuss today. But what do we use as moral reference and as a moral guide? I'm usually fighting the fight from the perspective of the little guy looking for that fair shake. It's the idealist in me. This today, I always want to sort of touch on things that you're not always going to agree with, and depending on who you are, I'm not always going to take the same side because I'm more interested in creating dialogue about any particular subject that I bring up. It's suggested by these authors, their names are Yaron Brook and Onkar Gate, that who we should really be looking to for moral guidance are pioneers that have brought us into this century and who have given us what we've got and all the things that we rely on for sound quality of life. And for better or worse, you can say, oh, the man is keeping me down and the man did this and the man did that. Well, the man is responsible for increasing life expectancy on this planet. Right now, it's the highest it's ever been. I've been told it's probably going to start going backwards in the next 10 to 20 years because of the rate of cancers and everything else going on. But right now, quality of life in the free world is pretty amazing for everybody because we all have access to technology. We all have access to better health care for the most part. And quality of life, we all enjoy life way more than, say, what our grandparents did. It's not as hard. We're living longer. We're living healthier. I'm 46 years old. 46 is pretty young in today's society, whereas 200 years ago, 46 was you're getting up there towards the end of your lifespan. Because I think in, the 1700s with all the disease, death came a lot sooner, and you didn't get people living into their 70s and 80s like you do now, and even into your 90s. So the suggestion is, and I really looked at it. It made me think, where would we be without pioneers and captains of industry? There'd be fewer jobs created, which means fewer people having a chance to make a quality life for themselves and to bring more people in to the world. And you think about why we're here and what our purpose is on life. And, some would say, well, it's to procreate, to keep the species going. I think that may be part of it. And I also think part of it is to experience life. And every person that comes into this world has a chance to experience what life really is. And that, I think, is, probably what the focus should be, is take as much as you can out of life, before your time is up. So we probably owe a lot to these people who created everything that we have and keep creating, like the Bill Gates of the world, the Warren Buffetts. Not everybody's going to agree with this because, and I know people that have to do a job and they wish they didn't, and they need somebody to blame, and generally they're going to blame the man. It's probably the person they're working for, and they're going, I got this job, I hate it, I hate my boss. And very rarely is anybody going, I'm so thankful that I have an opportunity to work and to provide and to pay my bills and, to make something in my life. And you rarely hear them paying homage to the person that maybe created that position for them, so they have a job to go to every day. I know it's a different spin for me. So when you think about morality and why we're here and what we're doing, well, people that have good moral compasses usually have good, strong work ethics. And they can usually, at some point, trace that back to the beginnings, where they first worked and what kind of experience they had in that job. And maybe that gave them the good moral compass. I think there might be something about this whole thing and the moral code being out of date. Maybe needs a revamp. Who knows? I'm going to post a link so you can read the article in full. It's good food for thought. Today, though, I really did want to talk, and let's see how much time I've got left here because I don't want to run into crazy time. The crazy gun registry here in Canada. We've spent in excess of $1 billion. We might never know exactly how much money we spent. The idea is that if we control guns in Canada, make every single person that wants to own a gun register it, that crimes by guns and murders by guns are going to go down. Sadly, though, when it first started, the whole gun registry, I didn't understand it. I don't own a gun, personally. Now, I've been to the range to shoot guns. It's fun. Do I want to have a gun in my house? I don't really see the need for it because, honestly, the chances that I'm ever going to have to fend off an attacker in my house, I have 2 rather large dogs, by the way, is remote at best. So going into this whole gun registry thing, I was curious what the main reasoning was for creating it. I can't see any other reason than it's another cash grab for somebody because over $1 billion was spent. So did they create jobs? Probably created a few jobs. Did somebody make some money down the road? Somebody made a lot of money, as far as I can see anyways. But to what end? I've got stats up that I thought were really interesting. And, it sort of goes to the whole reason, why would you need a gun registry? Why would you want upstanding citizens of your community to register a gun that's potentially going to protect you in the future? To what end? Because here's the reality. Criminals don't care in due process. They don't care in following rules. So a criminal gets his hands on a gun, he's definitely going to take the good step forward to get that gun registered. Chances are the gun's stolen. I guess what I'm trying to suggest is criminals aren't going to stop being criminals because there's a gun registry in place. It's not going to deter them. Looking at statistics and why we spent over $1 billion on something that should just be scrapped, it's coming down the pipe. Our government's about to vote on it. It could go to the wayside, or it could be something that continues to be a massive cash cow for whoever is benefiting from it. And at this point, it's hard to figure out who is the benefactor of this massive gun registry that costs us and continues to cost us. Canada, per 100,000 people, total homicides in our country, and basically the graph that I have is going specific years, I think, where it peaks. So the numbers I have, when we had a population of 28 million people, which is 92, I think we're closer to 35 now, was 2.16 homicides per 100,000 people. Out of those 2.16, 0.76 of those homicides were by gun. Worldwide, the trends are pretty clear that the majority of homicides, with the exception of a few countries, are non-gun related, which means they're done by poisoning, strangulation, knives, whatever. They're not happening by guns. The United States has a pretty high number, but when you consider their population, it's not that great. Still trying to figure out why we're spending money, why we're demonizing the gun, because everybody knows the gun doesn't kill. The person that has the gun kills. Criminals are more likely to use a gun in a crime where they're, say, holding up a bank or whatever else, and gang activity. In this city of Calgary where I live, all the gangs all have guns. We know that because when the police pull them over and bust them, they usually have a cache in their car somewhere. They use them. They use them to sort of enforce and to protect their territory. Those guns weren't bought. They weren't bought in a store. They'll never be traced. So who's the registry protecting? And I don't... I always move towards conspiracy, and a buddy of mine, Greg, asked, why do you always smirk when you talk about conspiracy? And I said, I don't know. The word makes me giggle like a schoolgirl. I love the idea of conspiracies. My real belief, it doesn't have to do with money and somebody on the back end making large quantities of it. My feeling is, and I mean the Americans have tried to create some kind of gun registry too, thinking that it would, reduce crimes by gun and murder by gun. My belief is, you don't want the average citizen in Canada carrying a gun, because if it ever got to a point where there was complete civil unrest and people got the idea of, say, revolting against our government, the last thing you would want is a portion of the country having arms. So they could potentially uprise. Now, the idea of that in Canada or North America, it probably seems ludicrous to most, but we haven't had a severe recession. We've had minor ones over the years, and they're going to be here because, the economy goes up and down. But if you ever got to a point where you couldn't feed your family and food wasn't readily available and you knew the government wasn't acting in your best interest, the last thing a government would want is people to have guns in their hands. If you got them all registered and the people that have guns, well, then you've got somebody to target if shit hits the fan. I know it sounds crazy, but that's the only motivation I could see for government wanting upstanding citizens who are above the law to register every gun that they have in their house. Who are they trying to protect? Food for thought. That's pretty much, excuse me, my egg for today. Sorry, Doc. Again, I'm not very angry today. I don't know if I should be. But I'm angry at the weather.